Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Color of Science digital edition. This month, we are featuring a series called Ask Dr. B with Dr. Frederic Bertley, our president and CEO of COSI. This is also day 2 of the Science Festival. So as you know, COSI has our annual Science Festival, and we have launched it digital this year. Check out our COSI website, cosisciencefestival.org, and we have so many great events happening this week. So we'll have more to talk about that later. Welcome today. I'm so excited to host our president and CEO, Dr. Frederic Bertley, today for an Ask Dr. B session. We get so many questions at COSI for our president and CEO. As many of you know, he's an immunologist. He's traveled the world researching and studying viruses, and he's come to us with so much knowledge and expertise in so many different areas that we get questions about the vaccine, about mental health, about memory, about biology, just such a wide range of topics that people want to know about. So we thought, let's do a series called Ask Dr. B. So Dr. Bertley is also right now doing a show that some of you may have seen on TV, on PBS, WSU TV, called QED with Dr. B. And this is going to be in partnership with them for a mini-series where you can just ask Dr. B any questions that you may have about all the topics that he knows so much about. So welcome. With that, I'd like to bring Dr. Bertley up on our screen today. So Dr. B, if you could share your screen, thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Vanessa. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, this is our Science Festival. It's actually our 3rd annual COSI Science Festival. As Vanessa says, it's all digital. Go to cosiscifest.org, all kinds of cool stuff. But if you can't check everything out, make sure you stay tuned to how we close it on Sunday, because we have a Guinness Book World Record breaking event. Definitely check it out. But there's lots of programming for everybody. Like we like to say at COSI, from the womb to the tomb, we got something for you.
Thanks, Dr. B. All right, well, let's get started. We have so many questions that were already submitted by the audience. And audience members, if you're listening now and you didn't get a chance to submit your questions, that's okay. Go ahead and put them in the chat. We have people watching the chat and they're going to submit questions that I can ask Dr. B for you. Be sure to enter your name and age or what school you go to. We'd love to have that information as well. So, all right, let's get started. And one of the first questions that we have is about the vaccine. I know we've talked a lot about this. So this question comes from Shivam, who is 5 years old, and he asks, how does your immune system fight off bad bacteria?
Okay, that's a great question. So, and I'm glad, Shivam, you said bad bacteria, because the first thing is all bacteria aren't bad. So good for you for realizing that there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. So for example, in all of our tummies, in our gut, we have millions, actually we have billions and billions of bacteria, and that's important for our digestive process. But specifically to your question, how do we fight off bad bacteria? One of the really important things to remember, and it's so relevant with the pandemic that you're hearing now around COVID and viruses, or before that HIV, is the difference between a bacteria and a virus, right? So now we're all in this whole pandemic thing and we're all worried about coronavirus, like we should be. A virus invades your cell. So somewhere in your body, it gets into you through your nose. In the case of coronavirus, it's through aerosol. So through your nose or through your mouth, you breathe it in, etc. And then it gets inside your body and it has to find a cell. What we mean by that is a host cell. One kind of cell in your body. In the case of coronavirus, it's usually a respiratory cell, which is why it goes down to your lungs, you get a problem breathing. But the point is the virus has to infect inside a cell, right? So it takes a special kind of immune response to deal with that. But when you talk about bacteria, bacteria don't infect inside a cell. So if you get bacteria in your body, it's just swimming around either in your blood or in what's called your lymphatic tissues or in your stomach tissues or even on the outside of your skin. But bacteria do not go inside a cell. So your question is a really important question. The immune system has evolved to be really smart, really clever. And it's got 2 systems really that work collaboratively. In fact, you got a few more systems, but 2 main systems. One is called cell-mediated immunity. And these are specialized cells. Think of these soldiers that go around looking in your body to see if you are infected with the virus, or if you have a cancer growing cell, and it'll kill that cell and thereby kill the virus and protect you. In the case of bacteria, it's not looking inside cells because bacteria don't go inside cells. It's marching around, soldiers marching through the streets, looking out for these little bits of bacteria. And once it sees the bacteria, it zaps it. And the zapping is usually done by these antibodies that you hear about all the time, these Y-shaped proteins that float around in your blood or in your lymph tissue. Sometimes it can be inside your mouth, in your gut. These antibodies, these Y-shaped proteins, they look like the letter Y, they actually bind to the bacteria and help kill the bacteria. So that's how the immune system protects us from bacteria.
Wow. So there's so many moving parts, literally, and a lot that goes into that. Now, speaking of bacteria, so there's a lot, you know, when COVID first happened, there was a lot of emphasis on cleaning our surfaces. Mm-hmm. So that brings me to the question from Jayla, who's in 3rd grade. And she asks, do I need to worry about COVID spreading on surfaces? Is this a big concern?
Jayla in the 3rd grade, thank you for that question, because it's so relevant to what we do at COSI. We are opening our building June 3rd, and people want to know, hey, if I go to COSI or if I go to the library, I think I think Vanessa, it looks like you're in some kind of library there. People ask, if I touch a book, can I get COVID? If I touch an exhibit inside COSI, can I get COVID? And when the pandemic first broke, way back June 2020, we didn't really know because we were learning about the virus, but we have studied this over a year, and it turns out the way you get COVID, the way you catch coronavirus is again through, very close proximity to people. If they, speak, and sometimes in the vapor, or if they sneeze, or if there's some spit that comes out of their mouth and that travels in the air and gets into your nose or your mouth area, you get infected. They are very, very few, if any, cases of getting it from a doorknob, from an elevator button, from your can that you picked up at the supermarket, or from a COSI exhibit or an art museum exhibit. So you don't really have to worry about it being spread on surfaces. Having said that, we also still practice clean behavior. And just like every other place, COSI is wiping down and stuff with alcohol and whatnot. But we don't have to worry about that anymore, which is really exciting as we open our doors June 3rd.
Great, great. So, okay, so if the concern isn't so much the surfaces and it's more about airborne particles, what is COSI doing to keep our guests safe in that regard?
Absolutely. So first of all, like everywhere, we're asking people to wear masks, and we're practicing social distancing. Now, the good news is the vaccines are having a great effect, and more people are taking vaccines, which is helpful, but we're not relying on the vaccines alone. We are making sure we are practicing social distancing. We're asking folks to wear masks. And the other really cool thing is we have this really neat technology called photohydroionizing technology. So if you think of basically what they call your HVAC system, your heating and ventilation system that you have in your home or in buildings. In the winter, you turn on the thermostat high to get heat so you're warm. In the summer, you turn it down low to get cool air to be cool. That's your HVAC system. Well, what they mostly, not all of them, but many of them, when they work by circulating air, right? The air gets pumped all around. And as you said, Vanessa, you normally capture the COVID vaccine, COVID virus through aerosolated, or aero spray. And so what we've invested in is really cool technology that uses think of sunlight, hydroionizing technology. Think of the sunlight that you have out there, the big sun. We reproduce that in this HVAC system, and that ionizing technology zaps, kills all kinds of stuff in the air. Any bacteria, if it's circulating in the air, any viruses, any parasites, any moth, mold, anything that's not ideal gets killed. So we have this really great system inside COSI that'll make sure when you come, you'll be breathing the cleanest, safest air in Central Ohio.
Well, that's great news for everyone who's, I know, so excited to get back to COSI. And, it's so exciting to see how science has advanced us so far in just a year. It's really amazing to see how far we've come. And now we have the system at COSI. So that's great. So speaking of advancement in technology, really, and science really just taking over so that we can move forward as a society, with this new vaccine technology, what do you think will be the next plague or disease that really will be conquered by a vaccine?
That's a great question. And, there are so many diseases in the world, HIV, Ebola, malaria, tuberculosis, hepatitis A, B, C, D, or E, Epstein-Barr virus, measles, mumps, rubella. I mean, you can list disease after disease. And what's interesting, we've only really gotten rid of 2 diseases on planet Earth. In all this time, we've only got rid of 2, polio and smallpox. And that's really in the kind of the 70s, 80s, and then into the new millennium. And so we haven't gotten rid of a lot of bugs. Now, we've protected and saved millions and millions and millions of lives through vaccines. So they're still protecting people, but we haven't gotten rid of the bug. So to the question about the hope of these vaccines, these new technologies are really exciting because we think looking at things like malaria, tuberculosis, and other different viruses, we might be able to use this technology that we're now using for coronavirus to help produce vaccines for these other really bad bugs. So it's very exciting. So far, first of all, in coronavirus, the vaccines seem to be very, very effective. That's 1. 2, they seem to be very, very safe. And so we're excited about taking that technology, as you mentioned, and transferring it to all these other maladies or infectious agents to see if we can help more humans around the earth.
That's great. And do you think that they would be able to be produced as quickly as the ones were for the coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, so a few things, that's a really good question. A few things to understand is, yes, they were produced quickly, but they didn't do shortcuts that were dangerous. They were produced quickly, first of all, because they weren't starting from scratch. A lot of people think, oh, coronavirus, COVID-19 hit here. Oh my gosh, we're starting from scratch. Scientists have been working on vaccines for coronaviruses for over a decade. Just not this specific strain of coronavirus. So there are other ones like SARS that we heard about a few years ago. These are all coronaviruses. So we had a leg up. It's almost like you had samples of vaccine candidates on a shelf. And it's like, okay, now when you went for COVID-19, we pulled those off. So we weren't starting from scratch. So that helps speed it up. But also understanding how great these are working will allow future or scientists in the future to really think about different ways to expedite the vaccine process. So, hopefully we won't be in a situation where we have another pandemic and we're scrambling to save all 7.8 billion people on the planet, and that's why you want to go really fast. Hopefully we'll have enough kind of time to do a different kind of timeline. But yeah, it's all very exciting. And it really, getting back to your earlier point, Vanessa, it really, while no one is happy about the COVID pandemic, it really did shine a light on how incredibly powerful scientific exploration and the tools it yields, in this case, vaccines, can be.
Right. It really is amazing. It really is. And just how quickly we can, pivot and just adapt, and whether that be in science or society or as an organization like COSI. So it's really amazing. So I love this question that we received, and I think it's a perfect segue here. This is from Darrell P. He asks, how did you go from being an immunologist to the CEO of a science museum?
That's a great question. I want to bet. No, just kidding. It's a great question. So first of all, I have to explain what it means to be a CEO of a science museum. It's very interesting. So we're a science museum, COSI, and I'm the CEO. So I'm the chief executive officer, also called the president sometimes. And what's interesting in science museums is there's many kind of people who are presidents and CEOs. So for example, if you think of a bank, if you go to Huntington or Bank of America or PNC or whatever your bank is, the president of the bank is almost always either an economist or a finance person or somebody who's studied in that space, right? Similarly, if you go to a hospital, the president of the hospital is almost always a medical doctor, et cetera, et cetera. If you work at an accounting firm, the president of an accounting firm is usually going to be an accountant. Like this is an engineering firm, same thing. You get the idea. For some weird reason, science museums have a really neat spectrum of presidents. Some are educators, people who are expert in education. Some are businessmen and businesswomen. Some are people who have law degrees. Some are people who've worked in the financial industry. And so there's this interesting kind of diverse qualities of CEOs in the Science Museum. And believe it or not, what's really strange is very few are actually scientists. You would think it's a science museum. Oh my gosh, you'd have tons of scientists. No, we have great science educators, but there's not a lot of true scientists who either work in or certainly at the head of the museum. All right, how did I get here? Well, I got here, my path was immunology, but I've always done science, not just for the sake of doing science. I'm very passionate about science, but I also always did science because I really believe that science has an opportunity or provides the opportunity to really help the world, right? The drugs we help develop, to save our loved ones, vaccines is a perfect example. Engineering devices, these cell phones we have in our pockets, right? Well, they're not for you to call yourself, they're to call your friends or your family or communicate through emails to your friends or family or text or whatever. GPS, it helps you go from one place to another place because you're probably going to see somebody, right? I mean, all these technological advances are there to help humans. And so I love that about science. And so even though I enjoyed being a scientist and working at what we call the bench, working in the lab, doing stuff, I also like the bigger space of how to communicate science and get people excited about science. And you can do that a bunch of ways. You can be a teacher and work in a classroom. You can work in a science museum. You can do a radio show or a podcast or a television show. And so I opted to try my career in a science museum world. And so before I came to COSI, I worked at another science museum in Philadelphia called the Franklin Institute. It's actually the oldest science museum in the United States of America. It started in 1824. And I worked there for many years and I loved it. As much as I loved doing research at the bench, doing research, with my colleagues, Darrell, that was fun. But working at a science museum where you're seeing people of all ages, all backgrounds, and you're able to share how exciting science is, it was really fun. And that experience led me to the position at COSI, where I now work with a fantastic team of people that really make science come alive. But the moral of the story here is, and I don't know if there's another question related to getting a science degree. So, Darrell or anybody else who's listening, when you get a training in science, even an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree in science, the world opens up to you and you have so many opportunities. Because, as Vanessa mentioned in the introduction, I've traveled all over the world. Well, I wasn't rich. I traveled all over the world because I had a little bit of science expertise, and different researchers, different countries, different individuals needed this. And they're like, sure, we'll pay for you and come on over to our country and work on that. And that's just by having a little bit of exposure to science. And then you think about jobs and careers, I've had many different jobs just because I had some science training. So it's not the only way to go. Obviously, if you're a fantastic singer and you want to have a singing career, or you're a dancer, you're an athlete, that's all wonderful. But never underestimate how powerful having a science education can be.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that advice, because really, I think it really does play to, one of the questions that we got was from a high school graduate. Her name is Sarah, and I'll read her question. And I was just going to say, it really does play to her question. And what I think a lot of people, young people who are trying to figure out what their career is going to be, they're thinking of those things. And her question was, what advice do you have for students entering college who would like to have a career in STEM eventually, but aren't sure what to focus on or what they want to do exactly? Because, when you think of STEM, that's so broad, right? And you think of science, technology, engineering, math, and all of those buckets, there's so many different things that you could do. So how did you narrow down to science? I mean, you knew you wanted to be a scientist, I think, from a long time, but how did you narrow down immunology? How did you find that in particular?
Yeah, so great question. And I didn't get the name of the young lady who asked that question, but
Sarah.
Sarah, thank you for that question. That's a great question. So the cool thing about science, the really cool thing about science, especially today in 2021, is it's so integrated. So if you think back to like the Marie Curie days or the Albert Einstein days, they were working on one little thing and that's all they were working on. Today, you can be interested in biology, right? Or you can be interested in genetics, but you're going to be working with engineers. You're going to be working with software designers. You're going to be working with information technology people. You're going to be working with a bunch of clinicians, meaning medical doctors. You're going to be working with all these people who together collectively have something to do with genetics, right? Because you may identify a gene, but it gets analyzed through computers and computer softwares. And so what am I getting at? I'm getting at, don't feel the pressure to have to pick the exact specific scientific discipline now. Just pick something that you like. If you're interested in biology, go after biology. If you're interested in electrical engineering or computer science, go after that. If you're interested in physics, go after that. Chemistry, whatever it is, do something you're passionate about. And that I stress, because when you're passionate about something, it's no longer work. I mean, yeah, you still got to put in the hours, but you're so excited. I mean, when you think about, playing video games, I don't anymore, but I used to play video games like crazy. I love video games. It was easy for me to do hours and hours playing videos because I loved it, right? So pick a discipline that you're very excited by. and just work hard at it. And as you continue to take one course and then two courses, then you finish your freshman year in college, then your sophomore, by the time you get to a junior, you might have been exposed to something else. You're like, wait a minute, I started as a bio major, but I like immunology. Or I started as an immunology major, but now I'm digging chemistry or I'm digging physics. And so as you know, just keep working on things that you like. Those opportunities will definitely come. And the really cool point is, even when you graduate with a degree, you might graduate with a degree in chemistry and you might be working in a physics lab. You might graduate with a degree in physics and you might work for the government overseeing these high-powered labs that the government oversees. Like, that's the really cool thing about any kind of scientific training, is you get the opportunity to pursue so many different kind of career types. So I know it's overwhelming. As Vanessa said, there's so, you know, the buckets of science, technology, engineering, math, there's so many things to pick. Don't worry about that. Do the stuff you like. All that will work out later.
I love that. I think that's so great. And I hope you're all listening. If you're in that boat where, you know, you're graduating high school and you're picking a college, or you're starting college, or maybe you're halfway through, as Dr. B just mentioned, you know, it's never too late to shift and to learn new topics and see how it all ties into what your passion is. So that's great. Now, you said something earlier. You said, you know, COSI, we're big into, you know, from the womb to the tomb, and that's really lending an ear to lifelong learning. And so I think it's amazing that you're an immunologist and now you lead a science center, and especially during a pandemic. So it's not often that you find that combination. But how do you maintain your lifelong learning in immunology, even though you're kind of in a different sector, you know, leading a museum and organization? How do you continue your lifelong learning? Is there like a network of scientists that communicate and do, you know, I don't know, do classes together? How do you guys manage that lifelong learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for all the listeners, probably the most important thing about this answer is what Vanessa said. This idea that all of us as humans need to be lifelong learners. And the really cool thing about that, what we know today from neuroscience and our understanding of the brain, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always learn new things. And this is actually newer concepts. I mean, 20 to 30 years ago, we thought that, okay, you reach adulthood, the capacity to learn. No, you can't start playing the piano at 50 or the violin at 60, or you can't learn dance moves at 70. No, your brain can always learn. And so that really, lifelong learning is a critical concept. In museums across the country, across the world, we really believe in that. So that's just in general. How do I maintain it in terms of immunology? I'm super passionate about immunology, so I read a lot about immunology. So of course, I'm not at the research bench doing experiments anymore on a daily basis, but I still read some of the popular, what they call journals. These are really like magazines, like Nature is one, Science is one, Journal of Immunology is another one. And so you just stay up to date for what's happening. But then it was really easy during the pandemic because, as you mentioned, I'm an immunologist. Like, my specialty is in vaccine development, and specifically on something called retroviruses. Mine particularly was HIV, but retroviruses, you know, COVID-19 is a retrovirus. And so especially because there was a pandemic and I'm interested in immunology, you bet I was reading and making sure I caught up and knew all the research that's happening, because I wanted to make sure I was really well read, that if anybody had a question, I can give them a really good answer and or point them to some literature or some research to support the question that they may have. So bottom line, being a lifelong learner is critical. And to, you know, read, whether you read through the internet, you know, just pick good sources, whether you read, you know, respected journals, however you get your information from, but just keeping it up to speed. And again, like I said earlier to the last question that Sarah had, when you're passionate about something or when you really like something, it's so not hard to keep up because you like it.
Right, absolutely. And then it's fun. And to your point, it's not work. So, you know, everyone's learning about science right now. And, you know, a lot of people during the pandemic had more time to read and learn about different things. And there's been a lot of different information, you know, going across our society about STEM and science, especially during a pandemic. So is there a myth that you hear that you want to be a myth buster on? You know, is there something that you always hear and you're like, man, I really wish people didn't think that, because really the reality is this, is be a myth buster for us.
Okay, I love that question. Two big myths. Myth number one is that to be a scientist, you need to be an old white man with thick glasses, pocket protectors, crazy hairdo, and a lab coat. That's the biggest myth. Women make fantastic scientists and engineers. They always have, they always will. Persons of color as well. So the biggest myth is when you close your eyes and you imagine a scientist, don't keep imagining Albert Einstein. Imagine your neighbor, someone down the street. It could be your cousin, your aunt or uncle. Anybody can be a scientist. Why? Because all being a scientist means is you are inquisitive about something, you have a curiosity, you have a question. Hey, how does X work, or how does Y work, or how do I do? You have a question, and then you do experiments, however you want to design those experiments, and then you get data from those experiments, and you analyze that data, and then you form a conclusion. And so this whole idea that scientists are uniformly men and old men and or old white men, that's myth buster number one. Myth buster number two, and this is so important for anybody listening that wants to pursue science in undergrad and then maybe grad school and then ultimately even a career. It's not as hard as people make it seem, right? Science, not only is it not as hard, because you can test it, there are ways of you showing that what you're doing is right or wrong, etc. And so this idea that, oh, it's too hard for me, I'm not good in math, I'm not good in chemistry, I'm not good in physics. I guarantee you, you didn't have a good math teacher, you didn't have a good physics teacher, you didn't have a good chemistry teacher. And I'm not poo-pooing on teachers, there are phenomenal teachers out there. But when you had a great chemistry teacher, man, you loved chemistry, right? I mean, that's how it goes. So this idea that science is really hard, it's not hard. If you're curious and you're passionate about any kind of scientific discipline, chase that down. You know, surround yourself by people who are good teachers. If you can't find any good teachers, you know, go to some really cool sites on Google. You watch videos of some really good scientists out there that are breaking down science in really fun, engaging ways. But don't be discouraged about being a scientist.
That's such great advice. And it's so true because you just have to try. And there is always that myth of math is hard, science is hard. And it really is hard to break that. And remember that, no, we can all be scientists. So I love that message. And that's also the message of Color of Science that you founded and that you share with COSI and that we're able to share as an organization, that scientists, you know, really are made up of so many different backgrounds and science really is for everyone. So I just love that message. And you said something about surrounding yourself with people who can help you realize your goals and also get there. So how has that happened for you in your life? Who have been your mentors? Can you give us an example of how someone has kind of ushered you along and showed you the way and something that you really took something profound from them?
Sure. So first of all, I had a huge advantage. I had two amazing parents. So I gotta give a shout out to Leo and June Bertley. They were absolutely the best parents in terms of telling kids, and there are four of us, I'm the last of four children, telling us we can be anything we want to be. We just have to work at it. So first and foremost, I was blessed. You know, not everybody has two good parents. Not everybody has one good parent. I had two great parents. So that's one. But the other thing I really want to talk about is this idea of mentorship or role models or people who helped you. A lot of times people sit back and say, there's nobody that's a role model in my life, or I don't have a role model. And definitely there are different situations where you don't necessarily know all kinds of people. But you asked me what my experience, what happened in my life, which I've now seen happen in other people's lives, is when I was really interested in something, there was an adult somewhere, a teacher, a guidance counselor, a professor that noticed my interest and fostered it. So yes, I love my parents, but there were so many people who didn't look like me, who didn't have my accent, who didn't even like my hobbies, but saw my excitement about, in the case of biology or molecular biology or immunology or physics or whatever it was in a given day. And they were like, hey, you know, why don't you take this course, take my course, or do an internship in my lab over the summer? And so I'm saying this to say, and this was something that really came out well with one of the panelists we interviewed, Kelly Giraldi, the amazing young lady who talks about space and is an expert on space travel. You know, she said the same thing, that when you put yourself out there and when you show the world, wherever that is in your environment, that you're really passionate about something, people notice that. And then experts in that area see that and they'll give you a shot. So, you know, I'm not going to sit down and say there's a list of 10 people that paid my way. That didn't happen. Did my parents help me believe in myself that I can do anything? But after that, if I was passionate about something, I actually found somebody who was an expert in that area, or at least close to being an expert. And they're like, wow, Frederic, you really like this. Try this, do that, do the other. So when you extend yourself and put yourself out there, these mentorship opportunities come about.
That's such great advice, because sometimes you, to your point earlier, you kind of wait around and you think, but they could be all around you, and there could be little inspirations all around you in your life. Or say you come to COSI and, you get a spark, and then you realize, there's a series like Color of Science, and you could follow and just get some more insight into what's going on, and some great minds in science that are happening right now. Okay, so you brought up earlier that, you're a lifelong learner, and you're always, reading different publications. Is there something really cool that you're excited about when it comes to science? Is there something like on the cutting edge, or something that you've read about that's really excited you recently?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. So I'll talk about two. One of them is this gene technology called CRISPR-Cas9. You might have heard about it in the media. In short, we're all made up of DNA, right? Inside of our cells, we have a nucleus. Inside the nucleus, we have a chromatin, and then we have a DNA. We all have it. If you're a living, breathing specimen or any type of life form, you have DNA. Fine. And what happens is, for the most part, the DNA is fine. But every now and then you get what's called a mutation, right? A gene defect. And these defects can cause a lot of diseases. I mean, you can, from cancers to all kinds of different diseases. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of diseases are caused because of a mutation in our DNA. Well, the cool thing that this genetic technology called CRISPR allows you to do is it allows you to actually edit out that error. So let me give you an example. If you've ever written an essay, forget an essay, an email, or some type of note using Microsoft Word or some email software, and you're writing it and you get that little squiggly line underneath, that little red, I get it all the time. I'm a terrible speller. You get that red squiggly line underneath, right? It's telling you, oh, there's a mistake. And what do? You edit it and you correct that mistake. And then you go on and keep writing. Well, that's essentially what this CRISPR molecular biology genetic technology allows you to do. It allows you to correct the error in those mutations. And that is transformational. So right now, there's a disease called sickle cell anemia that affects predominantly people of African descent and people of Jewish descent. And for the first time, we have this technology that's actually curing people from sickle cell anemia, which is a really debilitating disease. First of all, you die from it, but even as you're living from it, it can be very painful because of how the blood changes shape. The blood cells change shape in your blood vessels, and it hurts and it circulates. So that's just one example of a really cool technology that we have today that we didn't have 10 years, 20 years ago, that really is going to revolutionize how we can treat certain genetic disorders, and by the way, so many other things, right? So if you hurt your arm or had a really bad arm, you can use this technology to help regenerate aspects of your arm and then transplant that back. I mean, I can go on. So that's at the genetic level. Another really cool technology is what's happening with computers. So if anybody has a cell phone or a tablet or an iPad mini or a desktop, any kind of computer, all the computers we currently have operate by something called binary technology. Binary means two. All the information, your essays, your PowerPoint, your TikTok videos, whatever you're doing, all the information is stored on that device as a 1 or a 0. And you have many of them. That's why you've got 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1. It goes on to stream billions and billions of digits, right? But you can only store the information in a 1 or 0. Let me give you a regular household analogy. Independent of dimmers. Imagine we didn't have dimmers. Before we had dimmers, you have a light switch. The light is either on or it's off. There's no in between. It has two positions, on or off, right? Just like you're either up or down. All right. Well, that's really cool, and that's got us this far. But where computers are going, and that's called the binary system. Where computers are going now is this new field called quantum computing. So they're using this whole physics process called quantum electrodynamics and quantum mechanics, which I won't get into except for one thing. It means instead of just having two places to store information, 1 or 0, like every one of our computers, it has an infinite number of places to store that information from between 0 and 1. So 0.1, 0.01, 0.01, all the way to 1, you have an infinite number of places. What does that mean for us? That means that these devices are going to shrink and be infinitesimally small and super duper fast. They're going to be implanted in your body. Yes, I said this out loud on the Color of Science. It'll be implanted in your body. And then you're going to think, oh, I want to talk to my grandmother. Close your eyes, dial grandma. It's going to dial grandma, and you'll be talking to your grandma. And you'll have all the space to store all the information you want. You'll never have to get more memory, or I'm running out of space because I got all these photos on my phone. You'll store the infinite number of photos. You'll store all the videos you want. You won't have that little spinny wheel trying to figure out how it's going to start. No, because everything's going to be instant. That's quantum computing. It's already been invented. It's just not made wholesale for the public yet. It's in these high-powered labs as the research continues. So genetics and computing, I'm super excited about the future of STEM.
Wow. Okay, you guys all heard that here. Whoever's listening, that was amazing. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. See, this is that lifelong learning that you're learning about all the stuff that's happening, and I'm like, I had no idea that was even happening. That's amazing.
Yep.
Science is so cool.
That's absolutely, awesome. And it will change our lives forever.
Very cool. Okay, well, we have enough time for maybe 2 more questions. And you talked a lot about your mentors and, just kind of how you got through your career to be an immunologist, traveling the world, learning about so many different things and studying at different universities. And then your role at the Science Center, and then your role as a CEO. So with that, can you share how you overcame some obstacles throughout your career? And do you have any advice? And this is coming from Ashley W.
Ashley, yeah, that's a great question. Obstacles, there's so many obstacles. We all have them at different times in our lives. And the best advice I can give is, once you believe in yourself and you have that confidence, that you can overcome pretty much every obstacle that's there. And so, and I really, it's sometimes it's hard, because depending on what the obstacle is, you think you can't get around it, etc. But if you're passionate about something, you can always overcome an obstacle. So that's a philosophical answer. All right. But there's also practicality. How do you do that? Well, one of the things is, and I won't use different examples, but just in general, when an obstacle confronts you, you can address it face on, or you can go around it to the left, or you might go around it on the right, or you might climb over it, or you might get a rope, throw the rope over it, climb over it. In other words, whatever that obstacle is, whether it's a physical obstacle, a mental obstacle, whether it's somebody who's telling you can't do it, whether it's you wanted to go to medical school and you applied and you didn't get in the first time, well, reapply the second time, apply to a bunch of wider schools, do some stuff over the summer, add to your CV, and you'll get in that next time. Like, there's always a way to overcome an obstacle. The biggest problem is sometimes when an obstacle comes up, we get discouraged and we no longer try, and that's being defeated. And pardon me, that's being defeated, and you don't want to be defeated, especially if you're really excited and passionate about something. So one, don't fear obstacles. They're going to come your whole life. Like, speaking of lifelong learning, make sure you learn that. You're always going to get obstacles. Something's always going to happen, and that's okay. That's part of life. You have to stumble. But as they always say, the question is, are you trying to get back up? And so when a real obstacle comes in it, approach it, depending what it is, look at it, and don't just try to plow through it. Look at it and say, okay, well, could I go left? Could I go right? Could I go around it? Could I climb it? Could I do, like, what are the different ways I can approach getting around that obstacle? And then eventually one of those ways will give in. But most importantly, if you're passionate about something, just keep at it. So
it sounds like you approach obstacles just like you would a scientific, like with the scientific method, just as you would a scientific problem. That's how you approach your obstacles, analyzing it and seeing what steps you need to take. And I think that that's really, really good, because, as human nature, as humans, it's our nature to focus on the negative. Mm-hmm. And so it's just nice to remember that, hey, that might be a negative right now, but just what are the other strategies that you can take to work around that? And I know you're really big on strategy, and that's kind of what that sounded like to me, just being strategic about what you face in life.
And I'm glad you said that, Vanessa, because don't be afraid to think hard about stuff. It's so, you mentioned being defeated, it's so easy just to be, oh, this obstacle came up, oh, okay, I'm gonna give up. Don't feel bad about spending some time. We talk about the mental muscle of the brain. Think about it, unpack it, dissect the problem. And you might be like, "Whoa, I got this covered. I can just beat it by going around here." So really, I love that. Being strategic, analyzing whatever is there, and giving it your best shot. But just don't be discouraged. Obstacles will happen. If your life, there's an expression that they say, a life lived unchallenged is a life unfit to be lived. All of us are going to have challenges in our lives all the time. If you didn't, life would be a cakewalk. And believe it or not, you'd be bored out of your mind if it was a cakewalk. So challenges will come, obstacles will come. It's all about how you decide to try to confront it to the best of your ability by being thoughtful, strategic, creative, and not giving up, persevering.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, this is my last question, but I had to end on this question because I think it's really important. And you just really touched on this, talking about life and life lessons. You, Dr. Bertley, you've shared so much with all of us at COSI and through the Color of Science and with our community and all the work that you do. What do you want your legacy to be? And you talked about June and Leo Bertley, and when you're talking about that and thinking about your life and lessons, like what do you want your legacy to be?
That's a good question. And it's funny, believe it or not, I've never thought about my legacy. I don't know if I still think I'm really young. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I should start thinking about this. But now that you asked me the question, I just want to be part of an environment where people work as hard as they can work and have all the opportunities that they can have. And if I can play a small part in ensuring that other people have opportunities and what they call the American dream, or opportunities of being their best selves. If COSI, if any of the extracurricular stuff, myself, my wife, our family does, if any of these things can help somebody improve their station in life, their situation, that would make me feel great. I don't have $1 billion. I'm not trying to get $1 billion. That my legacy is not going to be financial. If I can have a human impact and help make somebody better or have them have a better opportunity in life, that would make me, I would die a very happy man.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing with us. And I feel that you will die a happy man because already your impact has been so far and wide. And I know I'm just grateful for all the work that you've done for COSI.
Yeah. Now, for the listeners out there, feel free. If you want to cut me a check, donate money to the Bertley cause, the COSI, by all means do so. But yes, I just want to add that in as in case my development officer, Abby Poklar, is listening. Please feel free to donate to COSI.
Hey, get your plugs in when you can. There's no shame in that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. B, for sharing all of this great knowledge with us. We covered so many great topics. And again, just sharing your wisdom and your advice is just so helpful to so many different ages and all of us lifelong learners. I know me, for one, I really appreciate it. So, all right. Well, we're going to the next segment of today. I'm really excited. We're going to announce the winners of our STEAM art contest. So if you've been watching monthly, you know that every month after we hear a great speaker, we launch our monthly art contest. And each month we have a different theme. We've had some great themes. And so this is going to be the time where we finally get to pick our winners and announce who they are.
And so with that, I really want to thank those of you who listen to us every month, the first Thursday of every month from 12 to 1. And those of you who submitted, I know we've had dozens of submissions of really cool art projects from people of all ages, frankly. So thank you so much. It was a really hard decision, which is why I've handed over to Vanessa to share with you the winners.
It was so hard to choose, and Dr. B and I worked really hard on just combing through all of the great submissions that we've got. So I'm sharing my screen. Let me know if you guys see it okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the STEAM Challenge, as Dr. B said, we got dozens of submissions. Thank you to everyone who submitted. We had so many different themes: science and ocean exploration with Dr. Kathy Sullivan. What does a scientist look like with Caleb Anderson? Technology with Nicole Jackson, Space Goals with Kelly Girardi, and then Science Princess with Camille Schreier, who, as you know, is our Miss America 2020, and also Science Communicator for her as well. We showed you guys that we had some really great prizes that we wanted to give out to this great artists within our community. STEAM is really important to COSI. You know, STEAM is adding the A into STEM, and A stands for art, as you know, and it's really important to us because all of it is connected, and it's really important for us to showcase that through our Color of Science initiative. So we were so excited that we had so many artists who were also interested in science, and it just showcases that they both are so linked together. So, all right, so for third place, we have the winning theme of space exploration. And again, this was inspired by our speaker, Dr. Kathy Sullivan, who was the first female astronaut to walk in space. And she was also the first person and first woman to reach the deepest part of the ocean. So we had a space or ocean exploration. The winner of this is getting 3 COSI Connects kits. And those kits have at-home science content for you to do for hours. Super fun. We have a ton of different themes, and you're going to be able to choose whichever 3 that you want, depending on your interest. And the winner of third place is Shivam K, the 5th grader at Olentangy Meadows Elementaries, and 5-year-old in kindergarten at Olentangy Meadows Elementary. Shivam titled this as Our Solar System. And we just thought this was so lovely and such a great representation of our solar system. So thank you so much, Shivam, for putting this beautiful artwork together. And I will be in touch with you to see which kits you'd like. All right, so second place. The winning theme for this was technology. We hosted Ms. Nicole Jackson. She's a chief technology officer and also a learning scientist. We talked about learning science here today. She really talked a lot about the importance of learning science and how we learn, and talked a lot about technology and some great cool technology things that are out there right now. The prize that you're gonna get is a hologram machine or something of that sort. That's a 3D hologram machine. So the winner of that is Ming Fei Shuai, and she is 12 years old at Liberty Middle School. The title of this beautiful artwork is A Pond in a Phone, and she did this digital art piece on her iPad. So lovely, congratulations, Ming. I'll be in touch with you about your hologram machine. All right, I wish I had a drum roll. Oh, there we go, Frederic. We got the drum roll. For first place, the winning theme was, what does a scientist look like to you? And if you remember, we had an amazing child prodigy, 12-year-old Caleb Anderson, who was accepted to Georgia Tech to do aerospace engineering. It's just really incredible. And he was so great and talked a lot bit about his aspirations and goals. And it was so inspiring. And for that, we launched an art contest called What Does a Scientist Look Like to You? And we received this submission, which we felt came in first place. And that is Marco K, 13, from Upper Arlington Jones Middle School, titled this project Maria the Scientist. And I just want to share a note that Marco added when he submitted this artwork, which was, this is a drawing of my sister Maria. Maria is an inspiration and she works hard at everything she does. Maria is facing late-stage Lyme disease, but she continues to work forward and achieve her dreams. We were so inspired by this and the beautiful artwork tying in the COVID pandemic. She's a contact tracer, she's fighting Lyme disease, and really just inspired us as a woman in science who is a researcher. Just lovely. So congratulations, Marco, you got first place and you're getting an iPad mini. Yay. So, what's going to happen? Oh, before I go forward, I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that submitted their artwork. We were so honored to receive so many different submissions, and we're so excited to give you your gifts. Stay tuned. You'll be hearing from me with a little something special along with your prize, and we'll hope to get that out to you soon. So I'll be in touch shortly. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. B. He can talk a little bit more about some fun things we have going on this week and to close out the event.
You got it. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. Again, congratulations to the top 3 winners, but also to all of you who submitted really inspirational art inspired by the Color of Science program. So thank you so much for that. Also wanted to put a plug in. We know some of you know about this, but there's this new really fun science show called QED with Dr. B. Yes, that's me. I'm your host. It's in partnership with the great WOSU PBS affiliate. They are phenomenal. They make science come alive with COSI and our team here. And so check it out every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. We've been cycling a few of the early editions and early episodes, but starting next Wednesday, brand new episodes through the rest of the season. So definitely check it out on Wednesday nights, 7:30 on your WSU network. And then, most importantly right now, ladies and gentlemen, we have last year won the USA Today Best Science Museum in the nation. #1, numero uno, we were it, we were excited. Well, the challenge is on again. And what's really cool about this is what they call a people's choice, meaning it's up to you. You all vote your favorite science museum. And so take a shot of this screen with your camera, go to cosi.org/10best, again, cosi.org/10best, and vote. You can vote on your handheld device, you can vote on your tablet, you can vote on your laptop, you can vote on your desktop. Whatever instrument you have, you can vote. You can vote on Chrome, you can vote on Yahoo, you can vote on whatever modality you choose. Just vote, click COSI, pick it as your #1 science center, your favorite science center. The competition ends Monday, so you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow, you can do it Saturday and Sunday. Competition ends Monday. They're gonna announce middle of May who wins. But thank you for your support. We can't wait to have you vote for us, your #1 favorite science museum in the country. And with that, I want to thank Vanessa for hosting this show. I want to thank Jordan behind the scenes for the technology behind the show. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you for participating in another episode of The Color of Science and the COSI Science Festival. Enjoy the rest of the Science Festival. COSI.org, COSI SciFest or COSI.org. Find out all the great stuff that's there. It's all for free. My favorite 4-letter word after Fred is free. Check it out, enjoy it, and hope to see you here next month.
Yep, and don't forget COSI opens June 3rd. We can't wait to see you all back in our building. We're so excited to invite you back. So thank you so much for being great guests for us, and we're excited to see you next month. Thank you.